Name of actions.
Peter Conlon, Chip Malcolm.
Peter Burrow, Superintendent.
Jenny Cedar. There were some students, they don't have masks, so I was asking if there was an extra mask for them.
In my car,
I got it.
oh,
I did want you.
no worries. On TV,
And had some folks.
Zoom board members?
Suzanne Buck,
Lorraine Morse, Middlebury.
We have staff in the room.
Caitlin Steele, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning.
Logan Price, Business Manager.
Gracie Harrington, Berkeley Elementary Principal.
Nicole Carter, Director, Equity and Student Services.
Great.
Here's.
They can just go ahead and speak.
Well, I just want to announce the attendees, other attendees. For, just so folks are aware of who else is on attending via Zoom, we have Dana Peterson, Judy Weiger, Linda Marcy, MCTV, Ruth Shavak, and Tanya Sputeri. Great. As we have in the past, we're going to start off with public comment. Just so folks are aware, the policy committee is working on the specifics along with the communication and engagement to bring just some to our public comment timing. So we're going to try to limit public comments moving forward to a specific time. We're going to get to that practice tonight. We're going to try to limit them to 3 minutes. So please, no longer than 3 minutes for public comment. With that, if anyone wishes to make a public comment, we ask that you raise your hand, whether it be Zoom or in person. We will call on you, and then you have the opportunity for public comment. So at this time, yes, sir.
My name is Brian Orleans. I brought these to pass out, but I think you're all aware of your policies and procedures and your mission, correct? Okay. So I don't think we have to deal with that. The one thing I would like to bring up is that I noticed that it has been modified a little bit here as of October 1st to include that if there's a supermajority vote on a flag, that it can be put up on the entrance of the school. So that's how I'm going to start this. So again, my name is Brian Orleans. My daughter attends Middlebury Union High School here. I'm here tonight for 2 reasons. First, let me say, I am not a prejudiced person against skin color, race, or religion. I'm here tonight to discuss the matter of the BLM flag that's being hung under the American flag. That is, in my opinion, extremely wrong. It's an absolute disgrace, first to the United States flag and to this school, its mission, its students, and the community to see such a political position, a political flag positioned under the greatest flag ever. I find it interesting and not so coincidental that you have recently amended the flagpole policy to fit this agenda. Are you aware that BLM has ties with Antifa and is part of a terrorist organization? They've taken part in looting and destruction of cities throughout the United States. Their mission has nothing to do with Black lives at all, but instead to create separation in schools and communities, not only here in Vermont, but throughout the United States. They're also an advocate for defunding the police. They'll all have you believe that their goal is to end oppression of Blacks, and they want equality for education, jobs, housing, etc. But that's what they and we already have. Every children, every adult have the same opportunities despite color, race, or religion. Every person has the same opportunity to earn an education. If you come into this country legally as a citizen of the United States, you are an American. Therefore, as an American, you have the same rights as any other American. But you have to work for it. Nobody gets something for nothing. They're trying to get into our schools, government, any means possible. I will end there for that. The second is the mask mandates. Masks don't work. To wear a mask is just a suggestion at best by our governor. There is no mandate that says we need to wear masks. It's all about control. It's been proven that the amount of carbon monoxide breathed from a child made to wear a mask all day long in school is poisonous to their growth and their brain. There's absolutely no reasoning behind the fact that you have to wear a mask in class to stop the spread of a virus that has a 99.7% recovery rate, but not wear one in the cafeteria because the virus doesn't go there. This is all hypocritical. When my child doesn't wear a mask anywhere else except for in school, how's this helping her? If a child feels comfortable wearing a mask in school, let them. Again, no prejudice here. With a recovery rate of 99.7% for children and young adults, it's foolish to think that wearing a mask will save your life. Masks should be optional, not mandatory. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other public comment? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Lexi Orleans. I am currently a ninth grade student at Middlebury Union High School. I have two issues that I would like to address. The most important issue is the BLM flag. On the ACSD government flagpole policy, the paragraph states, with a supermajority vote, the school board may choose to fly an additional flag for a limited time that represents a symbol supporting our educational values and mission. The BLM flag has no educational value and it does not support the school's mission. Secondly, the mask mandate. In Massachusetts and Rhode Island, they have made wearing a mask optional. They made it a trial for 1 to 3 weeks to collect the data on the amount of COVID cases. The population of Massachusetts and Rhode Island is so much more than in Vermont, which means that more students in one building and more students coming in contact with each other. Their data has shown that making masks optional did not affect the amount of COVID cases in the schools. Scientists have done research on children and young adults and masks. They have proven that the amount of carbon monoxide that a child/young adult breathes in from a mask on a daily basis is very harmful to a child's brain. Children have had a hard enough time in school without a mask. We don't need something on our face that is distracting us from our learning. Also, kids with glasses have a hard time seeing because of the mask. I personally have to wear glasses, but I can't wear them because of masks every day. My family invested in contacts in order for me to be able to see. Making masks optional is the best thing for our school community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Other comments? Yes,
So
sir.
question, is wearing a mask at this meeting mandatory?
Sir, at this time,
I'm just curious about my own daughter's health right now. Is wearing a mask mandatory at this meeting?
It has been.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
If you don't have one, we have extras, take one.
I do.
Okay.
I understand your concern, but so be it.
yes, sir.
My name is Leonard Barrett, and I'm speaking tonight from the heart. I've been to this school for 31 years. I've been in your position. I was on there for 10.5 years. I was president, and I moved to Waivers 2 years ago. And I've helped this school out. And I love this school, and I love Bridgeport too while I was there. That said, I felt real bad here 3 weeks ago roughly when I heard that you guys were putting up a flag, because the same as this gentleman here, I think you're very disrespectful of the American flag. I really do. And I really think myself that you need to look up what the flag stands for, because I've always been a believer that we do not need another flag. And I don't care if it's Black Lives or whatever it may be. We do not need another flag, because this flag stands for what it's for. And then again, where does it stop? What flag will go up next? That red, white, and blue is everything to me. And I've been trying for a half dozen years now to get that flagpole with the American flag by itself and get 1 or 2 more put up so that they'll stand by themselves like we did with the football program. In 2007, you'll see 3 flagpoles over there, and each flagpole has its own pole. I think that's the way to address this. I was very disappointed when I found out that this board actually tied that flagpole to a policy. And Black Lives were supposed to fly on, and I was really, really let down. I couldn't believe, matter of fact, I couldn't believe this board would go that extent. That said, I really believe that the red, white, and blue should be flying by itself. And I do not support another flag. The state flag, red, white, blue flag. And if you want to put another one up, go for it. But when I talked to Sean Farrell and they said that you guys had tied that, I was going to stay and keep working with this school, helping out. But when I found that you tied that to that flagpole, I was really, really let down as a person that spent so much time and energy supporting this school for as long as I have. And I cannot continue doing work here at this school and knowing that that flag is flying on that pole should be by itself. I don't know why we haven't changed it. Etiquette says it should be on its own pole. Law says that you can put your 3 flags on that one pole. I'm not arguing that part, but etiquette says that flag should fly by itself and it should be the taller pole, and it's not happening. And so before I walked away from this school, I had to get some stuff off my chest because I have not been able, this school means that much to me. I've not been able to sleep very good here for 3 weeks. And I really think that you, as a board, really should take another look at how you're handling this policy right now, because that red, white, blue stands for everything that this country needs to stand for. And it's political what you're doing right now, and it's a minority that's driving. And I just cannot support that. And I'm hoping what I said tonight really means something to you folks, but if it doesn't, that's okay, because I cannot continue to support this school, and nor will I. Just move on. Sean's already found somebody to fill in for me this winter, and then we'll go from there. But I am really disappointed with this board. So thank you for the time.
Amen.
Any other comments in this room?
I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm a member of the Bridport community, and I'm here to advocate for a choice for our children to learn in their classrooms and participate in schools and school events, including athletics. I believe that there are 2 sides to every analysis. I believe that there is science that supports both sides of the coin today. And I believe that we are eliminating the evidence on one side. I believe that in order to support the IB curriculum and support our students in that, I feel that they should have the choice of whether or not they are comfortable in wearing a mask or not wearing a mask in school. It should be a choice, and it should be individual and not one size fits all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments in the room?
Mary Cullinane?
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I did not catch the name of the woman that just spoke. My apologies.
Liz Schwanier.
Liz.
Thank you.
Schwanier.
Okay, so we have Judy Widger Groves.
Hey, Suzanne.
Go ahead.
So it's actually Weiger, like tiger.
Okay.
Weiger Grow.
Yes. Just so you know, a couple things. I would really like to see, given what's already been mentioned, I'd really like to have the specific evidence that masks are a problem and they increase CO2 intake by students. Please send or forward the evidence, the specific research evidence for that. 2, one of the things about the whole Black Lives Matter movement is because most people will respond that all lives matter, and all lives do matter, except they don't. They don't here, and they don't in other places. But that's not why I came here. I have two concerns. One is, as you probably know, emerald ash borer has been found in Middlebury. And as a result of that, it will take out pretty much all the ash trees in town and out of town. It's interesting to note that one of the traps that has been designed to find these insects was placed at the rec field next to Mary Hogan. And that particular trap had no evidence whatsoever of insects. So while the one on Chipman Hill and the one on the town green had plenty of insects, there were no insects on the one at the rec park. And it would be interesting to know why that was. Is it because of herbicides that are being spread at the fields? As far as I know, glyphosate is being used on school fields. And glyphosate is essentially the same ingredient in Roundup. And that should not be being used anywhere. So I would appreciate if you guys could investigate that. The second is sort of a suggestion. Middlebury has been in the news. The schools have been in the news the last couple of weeks because of issues, troubles, difficulties occurring particularly at the middle school. Being an educator of 34 years, I find that appalling, abhorrent. I don't see any excuse for that. And any suggestion that has been made by the superintendent or board members or administrators that it has to do with switching over to IB, the pandemic, the whatever. Personally, I feel those are excuses. And so what I would suggest and hope the board seriously considers is asking the superintendent to take one day out of the week to sub at Mums. I would also suggest that each and every board member takes one day out of their week to sub at Mums or the elementary school, Mary Hogan, or at the high school. And then come back with your response or your, Several years ago already, I was in Mary Hogan and I was dealing with students, one, a sixth grader that pulled a knife in a, whatever you call that place where kids hang their coats. Did anybody know about that? And then was dealing with another student that was, violent in a classroom situation. I think you guys need to be in a classroom and see what it's like. Sub for a day, please. And then come back with your recommendations. Thank you.
Ma'am. Great. At this time, we will move forward with the agenda. Also, at this time, I'll ask that anyone remaining in the meeting does wear a mask. It is a requirement of these meetings for people to be masked. If you choose not to do that, we've provided you with an opportunity for public comment. We will ask you to leave at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Next up, Peter. Should we split that?
We have Tracy here, and I'm going to, Tracy Harrington, our principal, over there somewhere. And she is going to share a little bit prior to showing a video that Riverton School has created for the board.
Tracy, she's just gonna check to see if they left.
Okay. I think they probably did, but
You do?
maybe not, and it wasn't planned, we don't have a
I
real.
see,
Okay.
I see Tim on the,
Oh, he might be in the parking lot then. I'm not sure.
let's, do you want me to go check?
Somebody just.
Yeah.
Oh, she may not know he's in the parking lot.
Yeah, we're
Does she?
glad to be here to answer any questions that you have. We have a video that we created to give an introduction to how the school year is going and some of the things that we've been doing and the way our classrooms are configured and our staffing. So I think it speaks for itself, and if anyone has questions after that, please feel free to ask.
School, we come to learn new things and think creatively and live with others. I would practice being afraid, try again when I make mistakes, and show respect and kindness towards others. I will do my best to make my school, my community, and the world a better and more peaceful place for all. There was a small caterpillar, and we loved it. But what? It wasn't small like normally 8 blocks. We loved it, and it finally turned to a chrysalis. It took a few weekends, and then it turned to a butterfly. We're really happy, and we had a nice day remembering about it. But one. It was still flapping its wings in the rain. But it took at least a day for them to dry and then flew good. Well, we didn't see it in the morning, so it must have been in the night or something. The first few weeks of school, we did a lot of exploration. Each week, we have Woods Wednesday when we go to our outdoor classroom and play outside games, learn about plants and animals, and work together to explore the trees and woods. In math, we had lots of different tools to make patterns and shapes. Some people in our class put together a long train of Unifix cubes that we measured with our bodies lying down. like being with my friends and learning math and getting to read, which I really like. Every day we have a schedule of all our classes and activities. It is a little bit different every day. On the schedule, we have vlogs with specials like music, art, PE, and Spanish, when our class gets divided into 2 groups. Lastly, we're building squares with 12 popsicle sticks. First, we got split up into groups of 3, and then each person got 4 popsicle sticks in colored from red, yellow, or blue. Next, we got a sheet of paper that told us how many squares to make. Everybody had to participate because they could only touch their own color. We really had to work together and communicate. It was really fun. In the first week of school, we built towers out of 1 foot of tape and 1 piece of printed paper. The object was to make your and your partner's tower taller than anyone else's. We have an outdoor classroom where we play games, have morning meeting, build structures, and talk about weekend news and exciting events. I think our outdoor classroom is exciting. The nature houses are in our outside classroom. We broke into partners of 2 and we worked on our nature houses. Once we were done, we presented our nature houses and everyone's nature house was awesome. Every week at the end of the day on Friday, we do the student-led hour. That's where the older students make groups of 3 or 4 people and we do an activity. So far, we have done puzzles, games, and origami.
Any questions for Teresa?
Yeah, could you give us just a sense of how it's going, you know, despite all of the setbacks that other schools are suffering as well? And just in terms of kids still being masked, kids still having to deal with that?
It's going fine. I mean, I think that every year is a new year, and we had some changes that we made with our configurations. As you could see, we have 2 blended classrooms, so the class sizes are larger. We had some enrollment over the summer that we didn't anticipate, which made those classes even more diverse and bigger than we expected, but it's really giving, I think, the kids an opportunity to work together in ways they haven't before. So there's been steep learning curves for the teachers, but the students, I think, have enjoyed it very much, and everybody is getting the hang of it. So that, I think it's got its share of bumps, but every school year does. So overall, we have just a great staff, and we have so many dedicated teachers and support staff and people who are flexible and willing to step in however they can. So it's been remarkable, really.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Betty.
So not exactly a question, just a comment. I really enjoyed seeing the balance between using the outdoor space and the indoor space. It makes learning really fun and I believe enjoyable for the students from the comments they
Yeah,
have.
very good.
Yeah, just
Yeah, we have a wonderful space up there.
I just want,
Mary?
on the note, are you going to be able to continue through the winter? 'Cause
We have, last year we did in the sense that there were certain times each day where class is expected to, in addition to recess, to get geared up and go outside.
well,
I think that's the intent, yeah.
Any other questions? Any questions online?
Okay, well,
Can you look
Tracy,
at the attendees just to see, because Tim was on there. Daughter was there.
what were they gonna do?
I don't know
Told
what
him
it's
to come
like.
back, yeah.
So
Okay,
I feel like
okay,
we need to
okay.
watch. So I think it's okay.
Well, as always, Tracy, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thanks for all you're doing.
Trying.
Next up on the agenda is to recommendation to approve board minutes of October 25th. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Barb's second. Mary Heather, comments or discussion on the minutes? Victoria?
I just have one comment. I feel like the last couple sets of minutes, and Suzanne, I don't know if this is because you're online or if this is an intentional sort of shift, but they read more like a train of thought or sort of a direct translation of what went on rather than a synopsis. And I guess my comment is more, I guess, a question of what the board thinks is sort of a more helpful format or more easily, I guess, translate, how we think, which way is better to communicate to the public and to remind ourselves as to what went on, sort of which approach. Because when I read last week and this week, I feel like there's less clarity around who said what, and there's more just sort of because I was in the room, I know there were direct sort of quotes or thoughts that people had, but I'm thinking of people who have not been in the room, it would just sort of read as a train of thought because they wouldn't necessarily know where the thoughts ended and began. I don't know, maybe I'm alone in this, but Chip?
You're not alone. I know, Suzanne, I'm always the guy who's saying something, but I still am on this minute still. I was impressed with these minutes and that, yes, there were lots of statements, comments that were just sort of a train of thought, but I couldn't tie it into anything. What struck me, honestly, was after our discussion with the last, especially that I brought it up, relative to the vote and the discussion on the flag issue, that probably almost a page of these minutes were devoted to quoting a woman that had very strong desires for her daughter and spoke quite a while to this group. We all listened, but she was quoted verbatim almost through her entire thing, whereas some of us who are public officials and then have to declare positions were never quoted as to what those positions should be. I'm uncomfortable with that because I don't think it speaks to the gravity of the minutes in defining what happens. And I just don't want it to be something that's, the motion was made, there was discussion and it passed 10-3.
Right, we have to find a
So I
balance.
know I bring this
between,
up
like,
all the
bare
time, I
bones
agree
and-
with Victoria. I wasn't gonna bring it up this time, but it still bugs me, and, I'm sorry, but we have to find a way to have the minutes be more concise relative to the issues, and each of us has an opinion to be recorded. Sometimes they're not popular. But that's our job to be in that position, so I don't know what the answer is.
Other comments on Betty?
And just an addition, with remote attendance, I believe Emily Liston is missing from the remote attendance. She's a member of the staff as well. Just maybe you can add her name to the minutes.
Other comments? Barb?
Yeah. I have to agree, it's really hard to go back and read them. Because they are so detailed. And trying to then remember, okay, who said what kind of thing, and what was that in context of, which is, I think, more important. The other thing that really I felt very uneasy of was the public comment, having so much detail there. And I actually, my recollection of what a couple of things she said, like she didn't pull both her kids, that kind of thing. It wasn't even quite accurate, but I'm not sure we want this in the public record. All this detail about their personal life, so I felt very uncomfortable about that. I know she chose to say it all, but I'm not sure having it in minutes, as much detail as we did, is necessarily a good thing for them or.
Yeah, I thought the same. As she actually was speaking, I thought, I wonder if she understands that this is public record.
Yeah, because I felt uncomfortable listening to it, during, because it was so much detail.
Mary Heather?
I guess two things. One, I think it would be helpful for us to just ask a question like concerning this public comment, and when public comments reveal a student's personal information, what the protocol is. I think it'd be helpful for us as a board to know what to do in that circumstance. And then second, with respect to the minutes, I mean, I think some of this may be a factor of recording from a remote place and not being able to see who said what. And I think, so some of that I think is circumstantial a little bit and a bit stylistic, but I will say I do agree, for a matter of the public record, it should be clear in general, kind of what transpired. And I don't think it needs to be verbatim who said what, but some kind of summary, I think, would be beneficial for the public coming in. But I also just want to acknowledge how extraordinarily difficult it is
I can't imagine.
to keep details and to try and stay on top of details for a 3-hour period, especially from a remote location. So I just want to acknowledge that, and if we can find some kind of middle ground or something, I think that would be great, because I think Suzanne does a lot of work and puts a lot of work and time into this. So anyway, so I guess back to the first thing, I guess maybe it's a question for Peter, Well,
I think for the first issue, the first question with regards to the detail around the public comment that was made, I do think that should be amended in the minutes to provide just a public comment was made with regards to issues at the macro level, and put language to that rather than have the level of detail that we've included. Is everyone comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Suzanne, does that make sense? Great. And then I think we need to, as a board, number one, kind of come to a consensus of direction with regards to the types of minutes that we want or that we feel are appropriate. And what I'm hearing folks say is that if we can get to a point where there's some type of context and summary that is provided for each of the components of our agenda, that also then call out anything of significance that should be made of public record and noted as to whom is saying such comment. And if we can get to a point where we're providing that type of structure, maybe it would, just a consistent approach then would start to be a little bit more formulaic and a little bit then becomes just habit and you can get into. And I don't know, Suzanne, you'll have to let us know if there's something that, does this structure where, if you have to be remote, does that provide an additional challenge? Should we find a way where if you do have to be remote, then someone here for that meeting takes the minutes? Or how should we think about this from your perspective?
So from my perspective, and this may not be the best way to say it, is the board has flip-flopped so many times on what they want in the minutes that I struggle with what to put in them. There have been times that the board has stated that they don't want their names associated with comments, and other times they want their names associated with comments. Legally, the only thing I have to type into the minutes is a motion, who made the motion, the outcome of the motion, and then I can state that there was a conversation. Legally, that's all that needs to be stated. You tell me what you want and I'll type it. But it gets really frustrating when I try every single time to take minutes that show the full flavor. And yes, I may not be able to get everyone's name. And even today, I didn't get the gentleman's name really who spoke. I don't really even know where he came from because I don't think he said where he came from. So I have in my minutes sometimes that, I put in brackets, spelling with a question mark, because I don't know how to spell someone's name. And I don't even know if Sharon knows how to spell that person's name. I do the best I can, but it really makes it difficult to constantly try to fulfill the letter of the law, what needs to be in these minutes, as well as how to take them. So I'm doing my best. And I guess that's all I can say. And the reason I'm staying remote is because I'm traveling to Maine in less than a month. And I'm doing my best to limit my exposure because our daughter's having a baby. And I'm going there to help her out. So that is why I am staying remote. And I'm not really going out anywhere. I mean, I don't even attend the center meetings. I do them all remotely. So that is why I'm staying remote. When I come back from Maine, I'll be in person, but.
Peter, then Lorraine.
I was just going to mention, I think it could be helpful just, in relation to guidance and some kind of template that I don't know whether it would be the Communications and Engagement Committee or board as a whole, but it seems like it would be helpful to maybe do some research, come back with some kind of template that lives with the ACSD board so that, Suzanne's doing it this year, Lorraine's doing it next year. There's a handoff, it's really clear, and there's not a guessing game to figure out like how much or how little. That seems like it would be time well spent.
Great. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Mary Heather, could I ask you guys the communications to take that on?
Yeah, definitely.
Lorraine?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, not so much in defense of Suzanne, but as someone who, for very many years that I was on school boards, was the minute taker, either for a subcommittee meeting, for the regular board meetings. I was the full board, ACSD full board, ACSU full board secretary. Minutes are incredibly difficult. And as Suzanne said, there's only certain things you are required to put in them. And I actually used to be discouraged from putting too much in them because when you start trying to quote people, you often do get things incorrect. So, And I would agree, if I was the minute taker right now, I would be telling all of you to basically shove it, because it does seem like from week to week, there's always something wrong. And unless you've been taking minutes on a regular basis, you have no idea how difficult it is to try to encapsulate the minutes. And I've always been in favor of having a hired person take the minutes, because it's also very unfair for the person who's taking the minutes, who's trying to participate in the board meeting. We've often had paid minute takers. That might be something we want to consider again in the future. I don't know. But anyway, I just want to say, you know, as somebody who's done a ton of minutes in my time, I don't like hearing the constant complaining about the minutes. And I understand there perhaps are things at times that should be in there and aren't, or whatever. Everybody's got an opinion as how minutes should be taken. So again, just my 2 cents as somebody who's taken a lot of minutes in my day.
Thank you. Any other comments? Victoria?
I'll just say that this was not meant to be an attack of any sort. I think we're all just trying to do the right thing and how to best communicate. I know for certain that I could not know better. It was not an evaluation of Suzanne in any way. It was just an attempt to help us clarify what goes on in these meetings for the public.
Barb?
Yeah, and I actually, when I looked at them, I felt bad how much work went into them. I couldn't imagine how many hours it took to type those up, and if we could simplify it so that she doesn't have to spend that much time, I think that would be a great thing.
Great. Okay, so we're gonna try to find some examples, and then we can go from there. So with regards to the motion, I would like for that one change to be made for the minutes with regards to that public comment. So with that change, could I get all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great, so moved. ACSD bills.
Those were read by Barb and myself on the 1st of November. There were 4 general funds. First one is the big one, $287,700.91. And then 3, sorry, that's the only general fund. The other 3 are, what is it, 3 are the Gilton Fund, $531.50. Payroll-related warrant for $4,321.62. Payroll warrant for $246.26. I don't know why these are separate, but they are. And payroll warrant for the general payroll of $202,890.29. Any questions that I had were answered by Michelle, and I move that we approve the bills.
I get a second?
Second it.
Barb, any questions, comments? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, so moved. Next up, Peter.
Great, so I've asked Dana Peterson, who is the superintendent and director of the Career Center, to come and share a little bit about the work he's doing on the Hannaford budget. Previously, in previous years, we've had a presentation. Sometimes it comes after we've developed our budget. We felt like it would be better, honestly, to hear from Dana right now and get a better sense of what they're thinking as we're going through our own process this month, which Logan will be sharing momentarily during the superintendent's report. So with that, Dana is on and ready to present.
Great, Dana, just before you get started, Peter, did you give a sense of timing for this?
Yeah, he's going to present for about 10 minutes.
Perfect, thank you.
Will I need to be able to present, please?
I'm
Screen sharing.
Okay.
Also, maybe change it to speak. Actually, it won't matter.
How do you make it so he can share?
Can you get
Would be a co-host.
That's under, no, it's under share screen. I
Yeah,
think.
right there, the green.
Yeah, we can share all
Oh,
that.
there you go.
Yeah. That should work. Dana, does that work?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, it should be screen sharing at the moment, and you should see the opening slide for the budget overview. Can I get an information? Thank you. Hey, good evening. My name is Peter, just introduced me as Dana Peterson. I'm the Superintendent Director at Patricia Hannaford Regional Technical School District, also known as the Hannaford Career Center, and I'm in my 5th year. So thank you for having me this evening and for inviting me to present for a few minutes. A few highlights from this school year. Just wanted to identify some of our programs that are thriving. Our automotive program, diesel program, construction tech, sustainable ag, all of those are full programs with some of them with waiting lists. Our medical professions, industrial design and design and illustration all have very large numbers, although not completely full, are near capacity. We also this year opened an additional section of pre-tech programming in mechanical science as a result of the large number of requests for that particular program. We continue to work to serve all of the students from our partner schools all over Addison County and beyond. That includes up in the Champlain Valley School District, as well as down in Otter Valley. Overall, students continue to be very cooperative and very collaborative. We are appreciative of that. However, some students have experienced some social emotional learning impact as a result of COVID over the past 2 years, and we are working diligently to help address those needs. And we're communicating as regularly as needed with our partner high schools. And we're pleased with the responsiveness and the support that we've received. Overall, the students are very engaged in both classroom and co-op experiences. And I want to just let you know that our work-based learning must follow very stringent guidelines. And our partners are extremely supportive of that endeavor. And they're very glad that to have students on co-op and other work-based learning experiences. So it is a year of positives in spite of some of the things that are thrown our way as obstacles. The FY22 budget overview, as we look towards FY23 for the development, our total expense budget on a preliminary for this year is $3,829,301. Our preliminary expense budget for next year is $3,916,439. That change is up approximately $87,138. The revenues that we are looking at in a preliminary manner have not yet been fully projected at this time, but we are looking at approximately $79,000 in innovation grant support and some tax relief. Assuming that we are also assuming that a similar revenue stream for FY23 will be in effect for projection purposes. So that's one of the assumptions that we make in the calculating our overall budget and particularly our tuition assessments. As you all probably know, our estimated tuition assessments are taken as a result of our 6th semester average. And once the revenue is calculated, we deduct that from our expenses, and then the difference is the amount that we have to raise by tuition from member towns, as well as towns from outside of Addison County. All tuition costs, that's in bold there in the middle of that of your screen, all tuition costs are assessed on a 6 semester trailing average. In other words, you pay for students who are no longer actually at the Career Center. So we set a tuition rate for next year to support our work based on students that will have been in programming up through this current year, but not for next year. So the amount to be raised by taxes, and this is a preliminary calculation as well, is $1,938,000. You divide that by our sixth semester average, our FTEs, our sixth semester average FTEs based on our last semester, our most recent semester being October 15th at 147.25. Our sixth semester average is now at 132.52, and that's up approximately 4 FTEs from last year. And that yields a tuition cost of about $14,630. When we take our state payments, once again, these are also projected. We have not gotten confirmation about those payments yet. They should be coming sometime late November, early December. And when you divide that by the sixth semester average of 132, it comes out to a cost of $91.97. Now, I will tell you that at this point in time, that is a placeholder from last year. Last year, that amount increased by about $8. If that were to increase again by $8, would be at $92.05. That only has a very nominal effect on the total cost of tuition. Total cost per FTE, that's everything included. The total amount of money that goes towards supporting Career Center education is $23,827. I think that that's pretty close to flat, if it's not exactly a flat number from the FY22 budget. Wanted to provide an overview of enrollment trends, and what I've done here is what I've done for the last several years, take a baseline at the year 2000 and move forward. And you can see in here that back in 2000, fall and spring, each year it's the school year or the fiscal year, so it would be 99, 2000. And the red semester 2, the blue is semester 1. Back then in semester 1, there was approximately 130 FTEs at the Career Center and 150 in the spring. What you have seen over time is those lines cross, and the semester 2 line tends to trend just below the semester 1. That makes sense given the fact that we are in a full year program with most of our partner schools, and if a student has to leave, they are usually not replaced. So once the school year is set, the number of students that participate in programs can't very easily increase. It can decrease if students have to, if they move away or if they have to leave for some reason or another. So what you can see here is that if you take the endpoint over here in the FY22 or school year 22, you see that those numbers right around the 140 line, which I'm indicating here with my cursor, you have a semester 1 at 147 just above that line, and we're projecting a semester 2 at just around 140. So if you look, that sixth semester average has remained fairly stable with a couple of upticks and a couple of drops over the course of those 2 decades, just to give you some longitude. This is a little bit more of an interesting look, and what I did here is I took the sixth semester FTEs at 7 points in time over the last 7 falls, starting in the fall of 2015. On the left side of your screen, you should see that the FTE count at that point in time was 133.97. And this year's FTE count, fall of 2021, you have an FTE count of 132.52. So we are within 1.5 FTEs of where the Career Center enrollment was 7 years ago. And that includes a lot of volatility and a drop in total student body count in our 3 partner schools around the county. So you can also see that it trended down for a while and is now trending back up. Our 6-semester average in the past 7 years has fluctuated between 123 and 135 FTEs. 132.52 is at the upper end of that range. In the fall of 2015, we had an FTE count that was at its highest at 153 for the fall semester. In the spring of 2017, that FTE count also hit a low at 111.83. In the fall of 2019, we had 147 FTEs all told, and this year we're back at 147. Last year in the fall, we had an FTE count of 126, 21 FTEs below where we were the year before and where we are now. I did a little bit of a calculation for MUHS in terms of what that FTE count might translate into. If you take approximately 50 FTEs over the course of 6 semesters, 3 years, and multiply it by our tuition, that would be approximately $1.2 million. So for next year, you can certainly take the FTEs that you've had for the last several years, add the 51.83, which is over on the right in red, and calculate a placeholder for the approximate tuition that you would need to calculate for supporting the Career Center for FY23. Opportunities to collaborate. We can continue to work collaboratively with all of our partner schools. As I mentioned earlier, we're talking about some support for social emotional learning. We are in a couple of cohorts with a couple of other partner districts this year in terms of educational leadership and inclusivity. I am beginning dialogues with the superintendents about how we can support our students in recovery through a coordination and alignment of our recovery plans through ESSER monies to be able to support students, whether they are Career Center students in home partner schools or whether they're at the Career Center. I've got a couple of projects that I would be proposing to my superintendent colleagues around Addison County. We are moving forward with our CP2 offering and the IB framework. We are looking at implementing that with just a couple of CRSs or a couple of programs. Career-related studies is the CRS acronym, and it basically means the programming that we have, whether that's culinary or automotive or natural resource management and the like. And we'll have more information as we begin to submit our final application for authorization to start next fall. As we discussed last year, and actually 2 years ago, we'll be working with Addison County. I'll be working with the Addison County superintendents to work more closely during budget season and the budget development process, and this is one of the first steps. Our outreach meetings now consist of a fall and winter presentation for closer collaboration and communication with our partners. Questions?
Questions, Mary Heather?
This may be just because I'm new, but what is the acronym for CP2 in the IB?
Oh, yes. CP2 is Career Programming 2. There are 2 different versions. You can have a standalone, which is ours, CP2, where a school hosts it independently, and CP1 is incorporated within a school that's already offering IB and does an extension into the career related programs, partnering with another institution. The purpose behind offering CP2 is that it would be open to all students in Addison County.
Okay. What were you saying, Pete?
Career-related program is another way.
Gotcha.
Chip, a couple of years ago, there was a little glitch, and the number that we had been working with, and I don't remember all the details, then came in quite a bit larger than what we then had to put into our budget. And obviously, you're coming right now to us, I think reflects in trying to get ahead of that particular question again. Can you refresh, or can Peter refresh that? It was before our business manager was here, so I don't know all the details, but I remember it was a little bit disconcerting when we got to well, December sometime, and we had to sort of readjust that number. So I'm not saying that's gonna happen, I just want to be clear on how it, this board has to respond to the numbers that you give us.
Can you rephrase that as a question so that I can answer it a little bit more clearly?
I guess.
I think I can respond, Dana. So I think it was a couple of years ago, we had put forward a couple drafts of our budget and then got, there was an assumption made and then the reality was quite far apart from the assumption. So it sounds like, Dana, that this number going into that number that you shared, you're feeling pretty confident about?
Well, I'll put it this way, Peter, with all of the assumptions that we have, this is as solid and as good a number as we can give you at this moment in time. It's a great place to start. Several years ago, we did not do that. And so there were some assumptions made, I think, that had not been corroborated, and there was some miscommunication with respect to business offices. And I think part of it was our business office quoted a number that was significantly lower than what was really being projected. And I don't know where that number came from. So this is an attempt to give you the first view as we know it as to the factors that are contributing to the overall budget in terms of driving forces. So right now, that's going to be significantly more accurate than what you received several years ago.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for Dana? Great. All right, Dana, thank you very much for the presentation and the information, especially at
Thank
this
you.
time.
And Peter and I will be in close contact. If anything changes, I'll certainly keep them apprised, and I'm happy to come back and talk at another meeting if you so desire. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dana.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Okay. So before we drop into our budget update, and Logan's going to share his first time through the process and what he's learning and where we are, and that is in full swing. I just wanted to share a few things on the report, beyond the written report. One, all of you should have seen the email that went out today related to the strategic plan for equity. So we are beginning to put that together, really excited. It took a long time to get to those emails. We've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes and wanted to kind of have all the pieces in place before we went ahead. So this is really exciting. I think it's something that we really need right now as a community too. We're focused a lot on what's not working, and it feels like we're in a very reactive mode on every front. And I think this work is going to be really important to help bring us together and look at where we want to build towards in the future.
Peter, just one quick question on that. On that list of participants, was that the group that the board would have representation on or not? Because I didn't see board representation.
Not on that one.
Not on that one. Okay.
Yeah, not on that one. All right. And we'll talk more about the kind of the timeline and the process. We're trying to get this advisory committee in at the front end, which is why we had a number of pieces in place, and we didn't have the local leadership of the advisory group. So we did find, I think I mentioned in our last board meeting, we're working with a great consultant who is working alongside someone else actually, and is going to be helping to steward that group. So that advisory group is not, or the committee is, Nicole is going to be on that, and you probably saw that. I'm not on that. Board members are not on that, but we will have other places where we're involved in that process.
Okay, just wanted to make sure everybody had their expectations set, that's all.
And the board is going to, I mean, just in terms of where the board really leans in, is going to be after the advisory committee helps with data collection, with an equity audit and other community outreach. The board is going to be taking that information in and then setting kind of like the high level theory of action, which then will spin into probably late summer, early fall to the kind of on the ground action planning. that's coming. So that, anyway, that's exciting.
Yeah, just a quick question. Actually, I think it's gonna be really hard to select just 13 people. I think that's really gonna be difficult.
I agree.
And really getting the proper representation also from the community. So do you have a process in mind for how that selection is gonna work? And maybe this is, a question, for her, but Nicole?
I haven't heard her thoughts on it, so it'd be great to hear it. The plan is for us to get together after this closes on the 29th, and with the consultant, and Emily is also a part of that review committee to kind of look at the full number of folks that have applied and figure out what the committee should look like. So if you look at getting a representative, if you think about towns, and then you think about all the different spaces that we inhabit and we represent, and it gets to be a group of 70.
Yeah.
So it's funny because we did have a long conversation around like, what's the right size? And Emma, who is the consultant, she's also a legislator. I don't know if you know her, Emma Mulvaney, Stanek.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. She was saying she thought a small committee would be more appropriate for this group that's leading the process along. This is not the one group that is, they're stewarding this whole process. They're not the ones that are writing the strategic plan, or they're not like a group, a task force, for example, that's putting something together and then handing it to someone else. That's not kind of what their role is.
Will there be other opportunity again for, obviously there's only going to be a couple of community members, but I know folks that are really watching this and interested.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if we'll have any kind of focus groups or ways for people to participate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, cool. So having that overarching kind of plan that's maybe documented on the website or something that we could point people to would be awesome at some point.
Yeah, I started one, then I realized I think it's important for this plan to be the community's plan and the district's plan and not mine.
Right.
So I think this advisory committee will actually be helping to build that as well.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, so that is, that's kind of the biggest news for me. The other thing, last week, the Department of Health started to plan vaccination clinics for our students ages 5 through 11. We were told initially that it was going to be, there were closed pods. And the local Department of Health agencies were working with different COVID coordinators throughout the state and planning, okay, we're going to come to Bridgeport on this day, we're going to come to Shoreham on this day. It turns out that the communication changed from after initially they decided it was going to be closed, they decided to make them open. Which, when you think about elementary school students, and you think about all the different ways that we're trying to keep our elementary schools safe right now, having people come in to your elementary school from all over doesn't make sense. And if there's an infection, as you know, because those kids are unvaccinated, you're going to have entire classrooms or schools closing if there's any kind of COVID transmission happening at those clinics. So this has been, last week was very intense on the state level with lots of conversation around this and people trying to problem solve and figure out what they were going to do. We are fortunate, we were working with Addison County Home Health and Hospice, I think is their full title. And they are essentially collaborating with us to help us make this happen in all of our elementary schools as closed pods as opposed to open. So we are kind of working, we spent a good portion of today trying to work on the specifics of that, and hopefully we'll have a schedule in the next couple of days to share with the community with dates. the previous dates from the state had us starting tomorrow in Salisbury, I think 2 in, we had 3 initially, Salisbury, Bridport, and one other school.
Shoreham.
Was it Shoreham? Okay. When those opened, so those 3 did open, and this is how we found out. Those 3 opened, not one student from Bridport signed up at Bridport. Because parents from another school or another area found out and they all signed up.
Oh, that's not fair.
Yeah, so we're working, that's why we're working with Jackson County and Mel. It was an even bigger issue in some places where I was talking with the superintendent Winooski, and they're trying to coordinate with families to make sure that this happens, and same thing happened there. They also had the issue, I don't know if you read about the BIPOC community couldn't sign up. There was some technical glitch. So anyway,
So
was it
just-
rough? It was a really rough week last week.
Can you just clarify then, so folks have an experience of when they wanted, prior to the kid age, when they needed a vaccination, they either did it through the state website, or they went to Walgreens website, or they went to a pharmacy website and made that appointment that way. So for this age group, this is a different procedure.
Well, there is also the option of signing up to go to Middle Road, for example, the old canning place.
So
That
what
is also an
ways
option.
can kids right now in this age group get vaccinated?
Well, we're planning on doing it, at least for ACSD, we're planning on having the option at every school. And we'll be coordinating, principals probably will be coordinating directly with.
So they will have an option at schools that would be driven and coordinated by the district.
They can
have
also sign up on the state.
They can also sign up on the state website, and then they would go to one of the locations that the state is providing, or they can contact directly their pediatrician and a pharmacy or wherever those are. And then, depending upon the choice that they make of those 3, is there then a coordination that's required to provide that information to the district to say this child is or is not vaccinated?
That goes into, so this was at the beginning of the year, we thought we were gonna have access to the registry. Because we could see it all, like this summer, you can go in there and you can see if the student's vaccinated. They said, no, you can't for a long time, until about 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, they said, yes, you can use the registry. Which is why you probably saw in one of my communications, I shared the percentages. The only reason I could share that is because I could look at the registry and say, here, this is what our current.
So the district
We'll
will
have that.
have line of sight regardless of location of vaccination. Great.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. And, we're just continuing to support each other and support students. And that's our
What happened to the
number one
people
goal
who
right
signed
now.
up already for Salisbury?
So those 3 are still happening because people had already signed up. We felt like it would be too damaging to try to pull them away. So
And put them at the bottom of the list, right?
right, those first 3 are happening, and we'll work on mitigation strategies in those schools to limit exposure, et cetera. And then for the second shot, we'll work. We'll figure that out. Yeah. Never a dull moment.
Hey, why should this go any smoother,
Oh, God. Yeah.
Nothing surprises me anymore, so that's good.
Yeah, right.
Logan, are you ready?
Whenever you're ready for me.
Great.
Any other questions for Peter on the report itself and what was shared in it? Great, okay.
Great. Will, if you'll, I just have a few slides to put in front of you guys while I'm chatting for a couple minutes. Just wanted to give you a verbal, as opposed to Dana's had some numbers in it. We're not quite there yet. Ours is more of a verbal, just kind of overview what to expect from me over the next month or so. So it's, you can see there, what we're doing now, what we're doing next, what we're doing later. So now the focus is on the one thing we can control, which is our local education spending, which is our expenses. After that, we take a look at, all right, based on our expenses, how that plays into the bigger budget environment at the state level, which I'll get into. And then thereafter, what we're doing later is presenting all of this to the finance committee and then ultimately the board. And once we get numbers from the state, once we get the numbers that the state provides to us, present the bottom line of what tax rates are gonna look like. You can go ahead to the next slide, please. So as I said, right now, we're focusing on spending. I had mentioned to you guys before that the starting point of all this is expected enrollments. And based on expected enrollments, seeing what staffing needs may be, we have been meeting with the principals about that conversation, also talking with the principals about their specific, supplies, books, extracurricular budgets. So that addresses the school piece of it. As far as departments, is all of those centralized services like tech, technology, facilities, curriculum, special ed, which makes up the bulk of the rest of the costs, if you will. I say the rest of the cost, 80% of our costs are staffing. Most of that is actually in, the union stuff is pretty well determined as far as what those salary scales are gonna look like next year. So, those major pieces are coming into place. We can move on to the next slide. So once those major pieces are in place, then we look at where am I? Then we take we take our expense story, then we take that into account, as I mentioned, with what's going on at the state level, kind of that budget environment. So that I certainly won't get into tonight, but the budget environment, and I'm sure Peter's mentioned this, and we wanted to bring some of this in front of you guys tonight of, they're looking at the equalized pupil weighting study. That's still in the works. That's not necessarily going to affect this budget period, but thinking about how that might change our story. There's currently a hold on the spending threshold, so there's no spending threshold penalty that might come into play this year. And the Act 173 possible implementation, seeing how that might affect our budget decisions. So that's those are the two pieces. That's kind of the story that we're going to be presenting to you guys. I'll mention quickly the ESSER overview, and this will actually also go into the next slide. So one thing we're going to do is give you a quick sense of, hey, here's sort of the ESSER story. Here's what was available to us. Here's what we're thinking about using the money on, or currently using the money on. That is perfect. We'll go to the next slide now. So when we budget presentation is the second thing on here. At that time, and this relates to the ESSER piece I just mentioned, Mary Cullen specifically had asked about this. When we're presenting this budget story to specifically separate out the ESSER revenues and expenses, where ESSER money is coming from and going to, making sure to list that separately, just bringing that up. Anyway, so presenting the budget story to the committee, to the finance committee, ultimately to the board. Slightly prior to that, actually, is the principal presentations. They'll come in and do their kind of 2 or 3 minute spiel of their highlights and their, they're just their story, I guess. And as I mentioned already, the tax rate, by mid-December, we get numbers from the state as far as equalized pupils and yield rates, which, along with our expense budget, helps determine tax rates. So anyways, we start with our expenses, we take into account what's going on at the state level, and then bring it all together and present it.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, very simple.
So in terms of, just to add on a little bit in terms
Please.
of some of the timing and kind of what we're both working on. So as Logan mentioned, we're meeting with principals right now. We've met with most of the elementary school principals. We're primarily looking at, do we have our staffing right for this year? And we're looking at next year with projected enrollment and kind of determining, do we need an additional class? Do we need to combine classes? The kind of the normal things that we do in a budget year. As we've stated previously, we're not looking at any significant changes. We're trying to kind of keep things stable going into next year, a status quo more or less budget. we are, related to state issues and what we're working on. The biggest thing for us next year, which Logan and I were talking about today, is Act 173 and what the impact of that is going to be on our special ed funding. So as we look at, Logan and I were talking to Mary Hogan principals today and looking at their budget, and, we started talking about special ed and, what will special ed look like? And, we have to, the work we have to do for next year. And I've heard from some people that they're thinking 173 could maybe be postponed. I haven't really heard of that, and it's pretty late in the game. Nicole, chime in here anytime you'd like to.
Yeah, I wish I have not heard that at all.
Okay, I heard that a couple of days ago. So that's big work that we're doing. I think that's probably the biggest impact for FY23 is going to be looking at how 173 changes the revenue stream on current staffing, essentially, and having us think about different ways to spend that money if in a previous, the current model, we're getting a 95% reimbursement, and in 173, that's completely gone. So that cost, which was really minimal before, now could be really expensive, and it may not be worth it. So we have to be looking at our services through a somewhat different lens, just in terms of what the financial impact is going to be.
Do you see any material, like when you're thinking about your budget, last year going to this year, you're thinking about we're year 2 of COVID, and what are we doing with regards to loss of student time and reinforcement of professional development, or whatever that impact was that was material last year. Moving into next year, are there topics that you think, or concerns that you think are material enough that they will change a budget dynamic? So are we going to be looking at greater investment in interventionists? Are the challenges that we're seeing with regards to student behavior something that will be a material difference in how we resource addressing that? Like, how do you think about that?
So the intervention spending thus far, like increased intervention, and when you look at kind of our recovery going into this year, so the conversations last year around this time, we ended up using ESSER funds for those, which made sense because they're 2 to 3 year positions that we can fund through ESSER, and then they go away, and that gives us time. And we thought it gave us time to get out of the pandemic and kind of look in the rear view and say, okay, like we've got all this, we're in a good place now to get back to our kind of quote unquote system. So I think part of response to that is that there are a lot of unknowns in terms of what is going to be the future impact in still being in the pandemic and what this becomes. So I think we're thinking about that. In terms of material differences going into next year with, in terms of what students need, we probably will have, I think if you look at all of our different schools and you look at our budget as a whole, I mean, the middle school is kind of in conversation to look at what they've learned this year and what a model next year may be more helpful in terms of, what they have learned. We've added, as we shared, maybe a month ago or 6 weeks ago, we added a number of positions there to help kind of shore things up in the short term, but that's not really a full model. So I think there is conversation happening now. I know Michael has a couple meetings this week to talk with staff about what the current model is, and getting ideas and working with his different leadership teams there to talk about what the budget might look like for next year. So there may be some kind of, I think there probably will be some kind of shift in terms of the MUM's budget to respond to kind of what they've learned this year.
Other questions for Peter? Barb?
Yeah, do we now have a snapshot of what the current enrollment is that we capture this time of year?
We do.
Okay.
We do.
Can we see a
We're
Yes, and I talked to Sharon is working on that as we speak. I actually told her, I said, the board is really excited to see this. Those are the words I used. You can ask her, you all know her, so you can ask her, I didn't tell her that. And I think she's working, I asked her to do a kind of a side-by-side comparison. She had just for this year, but I wanted to have a side-by-side, so she's
Great.
working on putting that together. So I can share that at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, or sooner.
Okay.
I can email it too.
All right, Heather?
I guess this is a question either for you, Peter, or for you, Nicole, just with respect to 173 and just, even just for the purposes of, having this on the recording and making sure the public understands what those anticipated changes will be and will mean for our budget for special education services. And the scope of that, are they going to be big, kind of in the negative, or positive? Can you kind of summarize, if you will, for the recording?
Nicole, do you want to take it first?
Yeah, I have the spreadsheet from the state right in front of me. So the state estimates that our fiscal year 2023 census block grant total will be 2.276209 million. That's adjusted with a 4.69 for the NEPA, which is what does NEPA stand for? It's the
NEP, you mean?
Yes.
The NEP is the New England, it's an index. It's the New England index. I can't remember what.
Like cost.
AP
It's
is.
like a cost index.
It's the inflator, yeah.
And that is based on, so that number that I just read, the 2.2, is based on fiscal year 18, 19, and 20. They did an average, which was 2.174. Then they applied the index rate. They also broke it down for us by what it means per student for our district, which is about 1,291 per student based on our ADM average for those same 3 fiscal years.
For the total student population? So not just that.
Not just based on plans.
No, they broke it down for us. So it is about, what is that, $180,000 more than this year, somewhere in that neighborhood. And that's the first of, it changes over time.
Okay.
Which I can't specifically tell you what the change is, except that the goal of the state is between now and 2026, they're sort of fading us into this new place.
Okay, so, and by new place, I mean, so if I'm understanding this correctly, it's sort of an influx of support that diminishes a little bit over time. Over how much time?
2026 is when it is at its place.
And the goal is to get us to this new place. And what is this new place? I mean, it's a big question.
That's a great question.
In terms of understanding. Yeah, sorry, Peter.
So what 173 tries to do is to take our special education funding and allot it to schools based on their population, not just their overall population. So there's a federal law that, that you can't reduce your spending. It's called maintenance of effort. So it's overall statewide, the number is the same. Some schools based on, if you are a low population, high identified student population, you're going to end up with less. If you are a large school district that has very little need for special ed funding, because everybody's getting the same amount of money per student, you actually end up better off as we go out toward this 5-year arrival point. So in the first year, you basically get, as Nicole explained, an average of what you got for those 3 years. Now, there's a lot of discussion about this, especially in light of the pupil weighting factors report and all of that and how they come together so that, the winners and losers, if you want to call it that, balance out. The overall goal, of course, is to reduce red tape, get rid of time studies, and let schools use this money in a way that they can address student need, however they choose to define it. But there's a lot of talk about, okay, how, as sort of it becomes clearer, the impact of this on various districts. And if you are a sort of high poverty, high need, but low population school system, it can be very painful.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to be re-examined as we go forward. But for the first couple of years, it's really just based on your previous year's spending. As to there being a delay, there's a lot of talk about that because this system was really designed for schools to be ready for it. And to be ready for it requires a lot of professional development because it's all about, as we talked here, MTSS, multiple systems of support, or multi-tiered systems of support and all of this.
Universal design.
Yeah, and so for a lot of school districts and especially with the pandemic, this just hasn't taken place. And so the question is, are they ready for it? So therefore, should implementation of it be delayed? That's a decision the legislature has to make. We don't work very fast, so we're not gonna have that answer in time for the FY23 budget. Yeah, but hopefully there'll be a strong indication by then. There's a task force, not of legislators, but of special ed professionals who are on the census block grant task force, and they hopefully will make a recommendation to the legislature saying, we need to put it off another year. We have put it off now 2 years.
The task force is going to recommend that?
They could.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I
I'm
was like,
sorry.
I was sure that they
I just want to make sure we understand and that the community has an opportunity to see.
And while I have the floor, just a reminder, everybody, on December 1st, what comes out from the tax commissioner of the state is called the December 1st letter, and it's specifically going to address tax rates. And it's going to be a tough one to sort of make people understand that they shouldn't believe it. Because for one thing, there's a big surplus in the education fund right now, totally unanticipated, huge surplus. And by statute, when the tax commissioner sends out his letter estimating what taxes are going to be, he has to apply, or she has to apply that surplus as if it's being returned to the voters. That doesn't necessarily happen. So it's a number that we all have to take with a grain of salt. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Anything else on budget, Peter? Development?
That was look at us.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect.
No
Thank you
questions
all.
of me, I must.
We look forward to it.
Look forward to you. Oh, don't worry, buddy.
The fun is just beginning.
Buckle up, my friend, buckle up.
Exactly.
Okay, report of the board, State Board of Education Extension of Ripon School District Agreement. You wanna, yeah.
Sure, so we attached the letter extending, so I was planning to, we were supposed to last week share with the state board the outcome of the conversations we've had between both boards. With this letter that now is moved 2 months ahead. There is an executive committee meeting set for Thursday at 5 o'clock where we'll engage in conversation and about all I know about the meeting.
Any questions on the letter? Just wanted to make sure it's entered into record and. Is that a?
No, I don't know where this is going. I get frustrated.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Yep.
Next up, committee updates. Let's start with facilities.
All right, so did you all get a chance to look at sustainability?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess our hope for today is this is a sort of definition of sustainability that the facilities committee is comfortable using in the facilities master plan going forward. And we just sort of wanted the yay or nay from the full board as to whether or not you feel this covers it, you can support it, get behind it, etc. So with that, if there's any questions or comments on it?
Yeah, thank you. So I was wondering, with the items that are here, they're great. would it be appropriate to have an item or add to one of the items, really assessing and tracking our results each year as well? What we've been able to accomplish. It may not be a lot at times, but just, the check and balance. We're looking for the low hanging fruit, that's awesome. But also it would be nice to reflect on, well, what were we able to do, for a particular year, if possible. Just a thought.
Okay, I guess
It maybe could be.
as conducting an annual review, to me, is a review of both.
I mean, well, I thought of it as what could be done, as opposed to, well, we've done X, Y, Z this year, now we can do that. And it could, maybe just some wording around that, simply.
Chip?
Doesn't this statement go into the facilities report?
Yes.
So in actual fact, the report is a different thing than a policy that we will address how we've done. I don't disagree with you that we want to know that, but I'm not sure if this is what we're using as a very broad definition of sustainability, that's very helpful in the report itself. That's only where I would.
Right, this isn't.
Because it was made, you wrote it to be pretty broad. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, that's true. Right. And I had one other point, if you don't mind, and this may not be something either. So when I read this, and especially the last item where it talks about, hybrid vehicles, one thing that might be cool is to also then start implementing charging stations using something like, what are they called? Charge Point, where we can actually get revenue from it to help buy more in the future. It's a different model than using Green Mountain Power. So that could help encourage staff to, use electric vehicles. But I would want it a model where, we aren't giving all the revenue to Green Mountain Power, that like Burlington, they get a couple cents when you plug in and charge.
Right. I think with this, our general thought was we wanted to sort of lay out sort of the hopes and dreams and let the operational piece trickle down to
Then maybe
administration.
We could say maybe then including infrastructure to support those vehicles as feasible, so that people have, the infrastructure, for the last bullet. Something simple like that might be enough.
Aren't we going to have to support them if we encourage them to be there?
Yeah, and I think adding like all new district vehicles and infrastructure, like you could.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Amy.
No.
This is kind of picky, but I was I was really excited to read this and I wanted to be inspired by it. And I am to some extent, but there was like, for every other sentence, there was like this qualification, when financially feasible, to whatever extent possible. And I totally get it, like we need to be really clear that we can't do everything. But I wondered if there was a way that we could say it where we still get the inspiration and then there's just a blanket statement somewhere that says all of this is within, and again, it's picky, so you can take it or leave it, but it was making it, to make it seem less like qualifying. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah. But I appreciate that.
One.
Yeah. And this is, I've only read through it really once thoroughly, so, I may read it tomorrow and go, that's fine.
No, it's a fair point though, because we stated at the beginning, which you could say then that's a blanket qualifier, so it doesn't then need to be repeated. And I think the only other place it's repeated is point 2.
Right.
To the best of our financial ability.
Right, like you can remove that.
Right.
I think
That would help.
The one thing it is going to come against the cost, right?
Absolutely.
So,
And that's clearly stated in the
Yeah.
beginning, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're making that macro statement that we have to, as a board, honor and reflect our fiduciary responsibilities. All that understood, here's still our priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Or it can even be after you list the priorities and say, all this said,
Remember.
it's all gotta be real too. I don't know, whatever, yeah, I totally defer to, but anyway, thank
Any
you.
other comments? Great.
All right. So with those changes sort of worked in, does everybody feel comfortable with this?
Yep.
Representing our views on sustainability? Any questions or comments on Zoom? No. Okay. All right, then, today on our work plan was, I guess we were scheduled to talk about interdistrict transfer, and school choice. So at our last facilities committee meeting, we refreshed our memories about our prior discussions, and we reviewed the materials that we've looked at sort of in the past when we've had board discussions around this. But we decided that before we really got into discussing the pros and cons of the specifics of school choice, what we wanted to do as a committee was decide whether or not we thought school choice was or the facilities master plan was an appropriate place for school choice, or if we thought that it was more of an operational question. And so that's where our discussion started. And what we really determined was that we think that school choice is an important discussion to have, and that we feel like it should happen at the full board level, and that it's really not something that's an appropriate thing for just the facilities committee to sort of wrap their head around. And so I guess we ended with asking the administration to sort of put their heads together and their expertise together to come up with a recommendation for the full board. And then we're going to ask the executive committee, which I happen to be on, so it's really easy, to get it on the agenda for a meeting in the coming month or two for the full board to discuss. Peter.
Fine plan, to me, it's always seemed like, agreed, not necessarily a facilities committee kind of discussion. However, does it land more in policy? It's really a policy that we would be coming up with.
True.
So I guess I think that asking the administration to come up with something is great, and maybe they can bounce it off the policy committee.
I think we need to discuss.
I was trying to think that we would have the presentation by the administration to the full board, and then we could ask it to sit in the policy committee to flesh out.
I like that very much.
I think we agreed that the board did need to have a policy.
Yeah.
Yes.
It should not reside in the facilities master plan board, and that it is a sticky wicket that requires incredible expertise.
Right.
And we need experts providing us guidance in the debate.
Yeah, amen.
Much better said than, yes, that's exactly.
but it was discussed in that conversation that it would go to,
Eventually.
because we currently hold, it would be amending a current policy,
Okay.
which is school residence.
Yeah,
Chip.
but our major topic at that day was whether it was gonna be in a facilities
Right.
report.
Yeah.
No, it's not. We didn't eliminate it, but it's not in the report.
Yeah.
Just to clarify.
Correct. Good. Okay, so if everybody's comfortable with that around school choice and interdistrict transfer, nod your heads. On Zoom, any questions or comments around that? Great, okay, so did anyone or everyone have a chance to read the update letter? If you didn't, I have Howard Chappie's here. Yes, no?
Things are
Everyone
coming
got
quickly
clear.
this afternoon.
Um,
It's since been uploaded to Board.
Okay, okay, great. So this is, I guess, originated with Mary and Heather and me, and has now been seen by Peter and Mary and the facilities committee. And so more than kind of nitpicking sentence structure and all, we're just, for the sake of time, I guess, just looking for sort of approval to have this be the update to the community prior to the completion of the facilities master plan.
Yeah, I just need some clarification. What are we, just to make sure I understand, the model school, what a model school looks like, is that basically what the architect is, that he compared all our schools to?
It was when we had the board retreat, and we did a lot of sort of exercise around what is the model learning environment, and we determined things like single grade classes, full-time FTEs, equal access to, special services.
Access to the outdoors, all sorts of
Access to the
things.
outdoors.
Just to clarify, it's the guiding principles and it's in our facilities master plan journey. So
Maybe we should change it to guiding principles then.
Yeah.
if That's what we mean.
Yeah, maybe that would be less confusing, for people that are reading this.
Right.
Okay.
Because, because he had a model too, right? And so just not to be
We don't want to be
confused.
confusing. And if we
Yeah.
have something that's
That's
called
a
the
good
guiding
point.
principles on our site, if somebody sees guiding
So I
principles, they
think,
can look
I
it
think
up.
that's a really good point.
Yep.
Because in the journey, which, I mean, ultimately, that's something that we're also referencing in this letter. We want people to have the same nomenclature.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but that's what it is. It's in
Okay,
here.
yeah, so I didn't draw that connection, so that would be great, yeah.
Thank you.
The main thing, and I thank you for writing this, yeah, I wrote it, is to clarify to the public in whatever way we get it out, website, paper, however, that when the report comes out, that it's not gonna say that such and such school is being closed, okay? And that's correct, because that was the original premise that everyone was thinking we were going to make, if you think of it, when we even.
And do you feel that this does that?
Yeah, I think it does. It clarifies it. And because, I had that same, as a board member even, I had that same conflict to say, well, how are we going to have this facility report when we haven't made any of these decisions? And, so this sort of sets it straight. I think it's important to get it into different modalities of people reading it so that they understand that. It can't just be on the website.
Yeah.
I apologize that I didn't get a chance to read this before I went to the board. I did read it this afternoon, and as a committee member, I feel like I should have waited on something before it comes to the full board, so I apologize for that. The one piece that I might suggest just kind of checking back in is a little heavier weight on the strategic plan for equity at the beginning. It feels very heavy on financial reasons why we're waiting. And for me, it was as much the strategic plan for equity and wanting to make sure that if equity is leading this and making our schools more equitable, that we had those guiding principles. And I didn't quite see it until it was sort of buried in later on. But there was a lot about the financial state, from the state and that kind of thing. And I don't want to wordsmith it, but I just feel like let's give it a little bit more equal weight earlier on, if possible, would be my recommendation.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
And so, yeah, and just as, again, just for my trying to catch up here. What, in order to use, there's a specification in here that'll be done by the end of the year, which is only 2 months away, or less than that probably, yes, less than that now. So what work needs to be done in order to?
So do you remember the work plan from a couple of
Yes,
weeks ago?
yes.
So that's
Yes, got
getting
that.
us to the end result, and we've, was it last week or the week before, we've met with Ben Merrill, who's helping us with the actual writing and bringing the report together. So we're confident that we're gonna get it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I remember now, sorry.
Sure. Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom?
I haven't.
Questions, no? Comments? Okay, so I appreciate those comments, and we will put them in. And then this will go to the communications committee to figure out how to distribute.
Yeah.
Is everybody good with that?
Mhm.
All right.
Great.
I'm done.
Perfect. Thank you very much for all of that. Next up, communication and engagement.
Yes, okay, a couple things. First, our board bios and photos have been posted. Thank you to Bill and Emily for helping us out with that. If you go on our website, and click school board, the first page that comes up is about the board. It has all our contact information, and then just below it, it'll have everybody's bios. So you can scroll down and look at those. If you see any errors or things that don't belong up there, just let me know and we will get that taken care of.
Nice, looks great.
The question about personal phone numbers is something that we have on an upcoming committee agenda, so we will be looking into that and we'll talk with Sharon. So we'll hopefully come up with some kind of resolution for that question. The other thing is obviously we'll be awaiting this update letter for the facilities master plan, and we'll talk about where to distribute that and what, if any, sort of outreach we want to do related to that, or related, start thinking about when the board actually, when we do get the report, what kind of outreach we might want to think about with that. And then the other thing, I'm going to pass these out. These are what our committee has been working on of late, our recommendations regarding communications for the full board, just and setting up systems. So this is something I hoped would get on board track. It wasn't, so I emailed it to you, and here's a hard copy. This I'm intending for us to have a more, full discussion at a future board meeting, and we will warn this material to the public before that. But all of this, just for those of you watching at home, has already been on communication and engagement meeting materials. So they are already kind of publicly available. So this is just a heads up of what's coming soon and the kind of recommendations that our committees put together to set up systems for, communicating our work, for responding to public comments, and also just kind of expectations with respect to communicating just between board members and making sure that we're, kind of following practices with respect to responding to emails and meeting invitations and stuff, so that we're operating efficiently. So just a heads up on this. We don't need to spend the lengthy amount of time going over it now, but I did want to just kind of give you the product that we've put together. So any questions from that point?
So this actual piece will be on our agenda at some point?
That's my hope, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I imagine it needs to be a board action to say like, yes, we definitely want to, move forward with the recommended newsletter or what have you, or system for responding to public comment. And I just wanted to kind of front load you with information so we have plenty of time to digest it.
This is great. And even in paper.
Anything else? All good?
I think that's it at this point. That's really what am I missing anything, Jen?
No, we talked a little bit about sort of inter-board communication, and Lindsay had expanded that to perhaps like onboarding practices and what every board member should know. So we didn't feel like that belonged in this document, but maybe sort of another document.
Yeah.
So I think that might be something else that we talk about moving forward. And then, of course, we knew that the next piece would be the communications regarding the facilities master plan.
Right.
we have some ongoing work.
Yeah.
I'm doing some research on the side about town email list, et cetera, to see if we can get some more venues of how to distribute it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you. Finance Committee,
Hasn't met, will meet.
great. Policy Committee,
We haven't met since the early part of October, and we're meeting next week. Because we have so many items that need to be reviewed and brought forth, I contacted Sharon Fletcher the other day and I said, we need your help. So I'm meeting with her on Thursday to sort of come up with a game plan that works best and how to do this, so that we're efficiently getting these done
And I think
on
I'm
the
maybe
docket.
am I part of that too?
I hope so.
Okay, I
Yeah.
think I was, yeah.
Okay.
perfect.
And
I didn't know you were, but that's great. I know
Maybe,
you were.
and maybe Caitlin too.
Okay. Great.
Super. And negotiations.
Can I just open by saying, having been on this board and then a previous board for 10 years, I've never heard sort of rapid fire committees just putting out the work right and left like this. It's really great.
Finance especially.
Well, you guys are coming along.
We're gonna roll out.
Hopefully at our next meeting, we'll be bringing forward a contract to ratify with our support staff. We concluded negotiations. Just waiting for sort of the technical people to get all the stuff put together and figured out and ironed out. And then we'll, after when it's presented for ratification, we'll give you all the sort of goals and whatnot with it. Yeah.
Great.
Does that sound
Well
good?
done.
Great.
Yeah.
Is it? Okay, great.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we haven't seen the TA yet, so we're still waiting to get that.
That's awesome. All right. So that's all of our committee updates. Thank you all for a tremendous amount of work that is being done across this board. And I know it's taking a lot of meetings and work behind the scenes, but it's great, 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 great outcomes. Thank you. In the other, there is one thing that I want to bring up. As you know, Peter had sent out communication to the district staff for the two days that they had professional development, letting those professional development days be mental health professional development days, which without question was an appropriate decision, in my opinion, and one that we should, I think, very, very, very well deserved and important in their professional development. I think it's in line with what those days are meant to accomplish. That being said, we have a board meeting on one of those days, which then requires the staff to be preparing for said board meeting. And so given kind of, I think, the good progress that we're making, the work that the committees are doing, it gives time for some of that additional work to be worked through. I want to propose then that board meeting we don't have it. Does anyone want to talk about that?
Oh, hard.
Is everybody, Lorraine and Suzanne, does that make sense? Lindsay? Good?
I had one question regarding the facilities committee, because that's sort of settled into a day too, so.
Yep, I think we're gonna continue on with our facilities meeting. And so I think we can still get work done. We'll just have to.
We could double up.
Yeah. I'll have an extra long update the following.
Noted. All right, so Peter, does that work then?
Yep.
And you'll inform Sharon and whatever communication we need to get out with regards to that. So we can give people a good reprieve on that week. Perfect. So that's the only other I had in other. Yes.
And maybe I should have done it earlier. A parent reached out to me and just expressed a little nervousness about the survey that's being handed out to moms in the high school. And they are just concerned with the level of questions that are on there, that it could actually backfire and lead to kids like experimenting or whatever. And I just wanted to bring that up. And, is that like a federal level survey?
Yeah.
They sent me the, questions. I'm like,
It is.
well, this doesn't sound like ACSD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Risk survey.
Oh, is it risk? Yeah.
That's an all year.
Yeah, okay.
I remember
It's
building
an
that, I think.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's actually useful information.
Yeah, it really
I
is.
know, but I wanted to share that.
Yeah,
This is-
yeah, I don't understand.
Great. Anything else? All right, can I get a motion?
Sure. Move to adjourn.
Great. So adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.